Welcome in lacrosse fans to the Utah Lax Report podcast. I'm your host, Tim Haslam. This episode is unique because it's audio taken from a show that Kenzie and I did with Dane Stewart from the Game Night Live Rewind crew that also airs on KSL Sports. And so you can actually watch both of these on YouTube, and I'll link to them in the podcast description. But this is the audio taken for those who are podcast listeners and not necessarily video watchers, which to be honest is how I am. But I hope you enjoy. We talk all about the brackets, 4A, 5A, 6A brackets in both boys and girls. The Utah Lax Report podcast is sponsored by GroupSpot. Whether you're an organized high school team, a casual group of friends playing pickup, or a fully supported booster club, GroupSpot brings the team together like never before. Elevate your game and get to the finish ahead of the competition with GroupSpot. You can learn more at www.groupspot.app/sports-teams.
Welcome into Game Night Live Rewinds Boys Lacrosse Playoff Preview. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Dane Stewart, pleased to be joined by Tim Haslam of the Utah Lax Report. Brackets were released on Saturday, 4A, 5A, 6A. We're going to walk you all through those here on our bracket preview show presented by Heidemann and Associates. Tim, let's start with 4A, shall we? And a classification. Look, 9 teams making the tournament. So we're kind of starting in quarters for a lot of these. The first kind of play-in game, USA Hill Field taking on Logan. Look, we talked about Utah Military, right? Won their first game in program history kind of late in the year. What do you think of this matchup as just kind of a first round 8-9 to kick things off in 4A?
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think UMA will win this game to straight out of the gate. They've got some really nice players. Their goalie Hunter Keller is actually one of the best in the state. And those who follow lacrosse closely will know his name. But I think UMA pulls away with the win.
Well, they would have a tough test. How about Skyview in the number 1 overall seed? Tim, I think that we both had expectations for Green Canyon, but the Bobcats coming out number 1 in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're extremely well coached and they play hard. I was actually at their very first game of the season. They were taking on Weber, and Weber won that game by 2. And so, it's fun to look back because you look at it now and Weber's, I think, the 4 seed in 6A. And so if we had known that then, we would say, oh, wow, Skyview is really tough, is really good. And so, it's exciting to see them. And it's fun to see some new blood. We did think Green Canyon was going to be that number 1 team. But, number 2 for Green Canyon isn't bad.
The other matchups, the 4-5 matchup, Juan Diego taking on Bear River. How about the 2-7? Green Canyon ends up getting that 2 seed over Ridgeline. They will take on Waterford in that quarterfinal matchup. And then the 3 seed, the Ridgeline Riverhawks, in a region rivalry taking on Mountain Crest. Tim, any games in these quarters that you think could be potentially interesting?
I think that, Chalk will serve. I think Juan Diego will beat Bear River. I think Green Canyon will beat Waterford, which, as you may recall, was a playoff matchup last year or a late season matchup last year. So that's an exciting one. And then Ridgeline should easily handle Mountain Crest.
So that would set up a really interesting semifinal. Ridgeline, Green Canyon, part 3. Tim, how would you see this one playing out with a trip to a state championship game on the line?
I think Green Canyon. Well, first of all, it would be a great game. Let's put it that way. These two opponents know each other very well. I do think I would give the edge to Green Canyon. I think that they would come away with the win in this one over Ridgeline. But Dane, I mean, think about just what that means for lacrosse. In Cache Valley, just an awesome opportunity, and may the best team win.
It would certainly be a doozy. I would love. We'll see. We might find a way to make our way up to Cache Valley for that one. The other potential semi, I think Skyview. Most people would figure that would probably be a trip for Skyview into the semifinal. But you look at Juan Diego, Tim, if they were indeed to beat Bear River, Skyview, Juan Diego, the other semi. Any interesting notes, players to keep an eye on in that semifinal potentially?
It would be an interesting one. I feel that Juan Diego got off to a really slow start. They were also missing one of their best players. and they've really come on as of late. And so I honestly, Dan, I think that would be the better semifinal, to be honest with you.
Mm,
And it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see Juan Diego win that game. I'm not saying they will,
wow.
but
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, that's a nice little tidbit for you right there. Juan Diego, potential sleeper here in the 4A bracket. Tim,
Totally.
as you look at this bracket, the way it's set up, who would you pick to win a state championship in 4A?
I think it will come down to one of those four teams: Skyview, Juan Diego, Green Canyon. If I had to pick absolutely one, I think that the momentum that Skyview has will carry them a long way. But I think that Green Canyon, they've had their ups and downs this season. They were the number one team in 4A coming in. I think that they'll use that motivation to kind of reach that upper tier and get to that game. I'm really excited for this 4A bracket, though. Like I said,
Yeah.
any one of those teams could win it. If I absolutely had to pick, I'd probably pick Green Canyon.
Feels like it's taking Green Canyon a little bit to kind of find their mojo. A team that we had high expectations for. Have they found it late in the year? We'll find out with 4A. It should be a fun tournament. Tim, let's move to 5A. Look, this is the full slate in 5A, right? Everybody making the 5A state tournament. We've got first round games. We've got first round buys. Tim, as you look at the first round games, any games that stand out to you as potential opportunities for an upset or a potential sleeper team to come out and put together a tournament run?
Yeah, so there's a couple different matchups that I really like. First, there's a couple just in region games, which most people don't like for a playoff matchup, but I kind of do. You look at like a Maple Mountain Payson. You look at Woods Cross Box Elder, which is actually a really great first round matchup. East and Springville have already played each other this season. You've got Wasatch Highland, who are kind of rivals, and so you look at all these different matchups, and I really I just look at them and I really like that Woods Cross Box Elder game. That was
Mm,
a game that you did for the Game Night Live. And just Woods Cross is playing at a great level. They got smoked by Bountiful last night, but just they've seen a ton of improvement. The problem with winning that game, Dan, is then you have to play Park City, which is never fun. But someone's got to play them,
yeah.
right? And so I really like those. I look at Viewmont too as a team. We did their game with Bonneville. If they can click for all four quarters, they can be really a really great team.
Okay, Tim, look, there's some real interesting second round matchups. How about a team that, didn't finish top of their region, but got the highest seed coming out of their region, Maple Mountain, and they might have a second round matchup if favorites won with Viewmont. We saw Viewmont, that team, look, they got guys who can score it. They also have one of the best goalies in the state. When you look at that Maple Mountain Viewmont as a potential second rounder, I mean, you got to be salivating, right?
Absolutely. It is an 8-9 matchup, so in theory it should happen. Maple Mountain playing really well, didn't quite get that region title, which went to Wasatch. So if I was Maple Mountain, I'd be using that as motivation. Then, like you said, going against Viewmont in that potentially second round, that would be an excellent matchup, right? The reality is, Dane, is we just want another chance to call Tommy Fraser's name in goal
Right.
there for Viewmont because of just a great name and to see what Coach Salmon has lined up, that would be a phenomenal second round matchup. And if things go the way that they're seated here, then we'll see it on Thursday.
Yeah, they got some offense too. They can strike in a hurry. That can be a real scary team. Tim, how about Brighton? I mean, a team that I think made it to a semi last year in the A division, got up to such a tough start this year, playing in the toughest top heavy region in 5A, but they've started to put together some nice wins as of late. They got Provo in a first round. They could potentially play East in a rematch of a region game in the second round. What do you think about Brighton coming into this 5A playoffs, Tim?
Obviously, they're favored in this first round matchup against Provo. Like you said, the opportunity to go against East again is something that's exciting. I believe that Brighton did win that game in their first matchup, so they may come on with a chip in their shoulder. And look, like you mentioned last year, I think they were what were they? The 15th
7?
seed or 13th seed
Oh, were they?
last
Okay.
year. Yeah, and so then to make the semifinals last year, that's something certainly that they can look to. So if I was Brighton, I'd be really excited. Obviously, Park City would loom in the quarterfinals if they get past Provo and pass East. or Springville. But yeah, that's definitely a team that's playing really well at the right time.
Tim, when you look at those teams with first round games, which do you think is the best position to find themselves in a quarterfinal?
Again, I'd look to Viewmont. That would mean that they're going to beat Jordan, which should be an easy victory, and then have to play Maple Mountain or Payson. And so I really like Viewmont, kind of sliding into the quarterfinals. But again, don't be surprised to see Brighton in the quarterfinals. Then as we look at kind of the lower half, Timp View, I probably would put in that. They've got to feel a little chip on their shoulder, barely missing out on that first round bye. And so they've got to play Mountain View on Tuesday, which, look, it's going to be a lot to a little in that game because most of those Mountain View games have gone that way, unfortunately. So I would definitely I would slide Tim View in. They have played Highland if Highland does beat Wasatch and beat them pretty handily. So I would go Tim View, certainly probably a quarterfinal lock. Viewmont, and then obviously Brighton.
We talk about teams that had first round buys. Olympus the 1 seed, Park City the 2 seed, Bountiful the 3 seed, Alta the 4, Skyline the 5. Those are your first round buys in the 5A state tournament. Tim, we have potential for Park City Bountiful again in the semifinal. We've talked about Skyline. Alta lost to Olympus in the regular season, I think 15-6, something like that. Is this an Alta team that can put together that run and maybe upset a number 1 seed?
I don't think so. I think Olympus is too tough. Alta will likely play better than they did that against that first time against Olympus. That game was 8-0 at the end of the first quarter for Olympus. So Olympus just came out on fire and kind of put the screws to them. But I think that Olympus will still get Alta there. You talked to Park City Bountiful. I was talking to the Bountiful coaches last night. They thought that they would be the 2 seed and that Park City would be the 3 seed. So a little bit of motivation there, I think, for the Red Hawks. And I think they like those chances. If you recall, Dane, we did that game from the press box in there, and Hayden Hansen, the stud of Bountiful, wasn't playing. Park City though
they were
also
up at
dealing
half,
with
right?
That's right. Yeah. Bountiful led at half. So I really like that matchup. I think both teams would love to get another opportunity at each other. So that would be that would be a fun semifinal.
All right, Tim, we saw Park City against Bountiful. We saw Park City Olympus. Does number 1 win 5A? Do you think Olympus is able to get this done here in 2022?
I do. I do think that they can get it done. They're certainly the favorites. They're the ones with the targets on their back. But look, they only beat Park City by 2. You and I again did that game, and I felt that if Park City cleaned up a couple things here and there, that they could have won that game. And obviously Coach Merrill will disagree, and he'll say that there's things that he could have cleaned up as well, and that's the truth. But Park City, their face-off guy is phenomenal, and that's such a key part, especially in these playoff runs. Can you stay healthy? Can your face-off guy continue to produce? And if they do, Dane, that may be the best game that we have all playoffs. Would be that 5A state championship game.
I mean, remind me, Tim, no goals in the fourth quarter of that Olympus Park City game, right?
That's right. Yep.
So an opportunity for both teams to be like, well, asterisk all over that
exactly.
one.
Exactly. And I think if I recall, Park City didn't score on man up, so there's an opportunity there. There were a couple different things that, I thought that if things went a different way, but that's true for any game, Dane, and ultimately it'll come down to face-offs and great goaltending and who wins those 50-50 ground balls.
All right, we got one more classification, 6A, and want to remind you that Game Night Live Rewind is brought to you by Western Governors University. If you're looking to take that next step in your life, check out Western Governors University. You can do education remote, in classroom, on your pace. To learn more, visit wgu.edu. 6A, Tim, Corner Canyon, they've been the cream of the crop all year long in the state of Utah. Let's just start with the easy one. Does anyone beat Corner in the tournament this year?
No. Nope.
All right.
Not even
we
close.
Said we'd start with the easy one.
I think, Dan, it wouldn't surprise me if they come out and beat whoever they play in the state championship game by, conservatively 5 goals. right? And that may be on the low end, right? They're just so dangerous all over the field. Even if a player goes down, uh, they've just got another guy just as good to fill in, and it's no secret. They'll admit it. That's how they've set this team up. And so it wouldn't shock me if it's 5 or more goals. You could probably convince me it's going to be 12 or more goals, to be completely honest with you, because it feels like that's just what they've done all season. And then if you look at the way that the seeds have panned out, the 2 seed is Davis, right? They beat them by 17 in the first game of the. It was the first game of the year. I understand that it was cold. It was the first game of the year, but it was 20-3. Davis obviously a better team than that, but Corner Canyon has also improved, and so
Yeah.
I just look at that and go, they're a shoo-in for sure, 100%.
I mean, it's a team that didn't lose a lot of pieces off a state championship last year. A lot of other teams have, and that was the story last year in the playoffs for Corner Canyon as well. I mean, we were both shocked that the game was close at half last year. So it's kind of like,
Right.
if you can hang around for 24, right, feather in the cap. But all right, we said we'd start easy. You mentioned Davis the 2 seed, American Fork the 3 seed, Weber the 4. Anything in there, Tim, that surprised you just as final RPIs and seeding comes out?
Not really. I think the thing to note is that you look at, so there's the 3-6-8 regions, and so Region 1 had 2 in the top 4. Region 4 had 2 in the top 4. Region 3, their first team would be number 5, Mountain Ridge. And so if you're looking at sort of region rankings or stuff like that, then that's definitely how it would rank out. I would say Region 4 is definitely that top region. It wouldn't surprise me, Dan. I did a couple bracket scenarios before this, and I said this at the beginning of the year as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we see 3 Region 4 teams in the semifinals. That still wouldn't surprise me. Obviously there's a lot of lacrosse left to be played, but no surprises. In those seeds, there wasn't anything that really stood out to me as like, wow, that team shouldn't be there. I feel like it's pretty solid.
So, of teams, let's assume that first round games, higher seeds win. Which higher seed team, Tim, do you think has an opportunity to maybe upset a second round game, advance into a quarter?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would out of the first round teams, I really like Riverton. Again, like we said in 5A, you get a hot goalie and a great faceoff guy, and I feel like they have both of those. Now they're both young, but of the teams with the first rounds, those are the ones that I would say would be Riverton. I don't think they'll beat Weber, but I do think that they have the best chance out of those teams to pull off an upset and move on.
Any interesting second round games, Tim, as you look at this bracket that you think, oh man, that's a tough way to start a tournament?
Yeah, all of them, right? I really love the Bingham Westlake matchup. That could really go either way. Bingham taking second in region, or I guess co-champs in Region 3 technically. Then Westlake, I think, is fourth in Region 4, and so I really love that matchup. And I it's the 8-9, so I think that's appropriate. Farmington Lone Peak is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Farmington has been playing very well lately. They put it to Fremont the other day. And then we've watched Lone Peak together, Dane. They're big and they're athletic. So I think that'll cause fits for Farmington, to be honest with you. And then Fremont Harriman. If Harriman can get rallied and catch Fremont on a bad day, anything's possible in that one. So just those were the games that kind of start in that second round. You look at like a Weber Riverton, I think it could be a really nice matchup. Whoever Mountain Ridge plays, I think I would favor Mountain Ridge, and then American Fork shouldn't have any problem with their first round matchup.
Yeah, the Lone Peak Farmington one was the one that caught my eye. Yeah. Having just seen Farmington, I would say they played maybe their best game of the year against Fremont and against a Fremont team that they do have some size, not as big as Lone Peak, right? But offensively, they shut down a pretty potent attack from Fremont. And so if that defense can play like that, they get great play from their keep. They've got opportunities to score. Mason Hepworth, I think, had 5 goals against Fremont in that one. He was an absolute beast. They got other guys. That could be a really interesting second round matchup, in my opinion. When you look at potential semis, Tim, anything that you think, oh man, that'd be a great matchup if we were to see it?
For the semis, it's tricky because that top half is going to be dominated by Corner Canyon. So no matter who they play, it's going to be a long night. But then you'd start looking at that bottom half, and look, we might have a Davis Farmington quarterfinal, which would be fun. Even a Davis Lone Peak quarterfinal would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then America, sort of the same, the same regions going against each other. American Fork Fremont, I think, would be a fun game. But then you start to get into like American Fork Davis, and that could be just a bloodbath thing. Like two very physical teams. That would be really exciting as a semifinal. If the seeds hold, that Davis American Fork game, I would really love to watch that one.
You talk about Davis, Tim. I know that you've got a little interplay with some Davis fans going on. Is this a team that can make it to a semifinal?
Yeah, look, Davis is a team that rides its highs and really, rides its lows. And so if they can continue this momentum, they've only had the one loss to Corner Canyon. That was months ago. They've clearly put that on the back seat. If they can ride their high and really start to play, they're playing well, obviously right now, winning the region. If they can, continue upward and really ride that, the sky's the limit. But they are a team, I feel, that if they get down, they can get down real quick. And maybe Lone Peak or Farmington knocks them off there in the quarters. Just depends on how they enter that game, how they prepare for it. So time will tell. We'll see what happens.
It's a team that has, they got a lot of offense. To your point,
Totally.
can they show up, put it together when they need to? You look at Rice, the Rice brothers, Johnson. There's pieces there. There's a lot of guys that can find the back of the net for the darts. And look, that quarterfinal matchup, whether it's Lone Peak or Farmington, not going to be easy. We'll see if the two-seeded darts can put together a bit of a playoff run. Tim, any final thoughts here in the 6A bracket? We have you picking Corner Canyon. Any final thoughts here?
I'm just excited for the games to get started, Dan. You know how I am. I just want to see these all match up, see how these play out. I think the interesting thing to pay attention to is, the first round teams, if they make it to the quarterfinals, that it would be 3 games in basically 6 days. Does fatigue set in? It's been a long, grueling season. It's starting to get super warm outside. Does that play a factor and something maybe to pay attention for? Pay attention to looking ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. It'll be interesting. And the way the playoff is structured this year, 3 games that opening week for teams that have a first round game, semis and championships that following week. To your point, conditioning and do you have the legs and the depth to be able to put together a run and go capture a state championship? Only time will tell.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Looking forward to how this one all plays out. And, at the end of the day, Dane, we still have a couple more weeks of lacrosse, which is always a good thing in my book.
Yeah. Well, we will have lacrosse playoff coverage for you right here. We'll start next week, take you all the way through, including semis and championships, right here on KSLSports.com. We'll have them for you, including every semi and every championship game, and we'll spread around the coverage up until that point. For Tim Haslam, Vince Francis, my name is Dane Stewart. Thank you for joining us here on the Boys Lacrosse Playoff Preview, presented by Heidemann and Associates, and we'll see you in the playoffs. Welcome into Game Night Live Rewind's Girls Lacrosse Playoff Preview Show. We got brackets for you in 4A, 5A, 6A, going to walk you through all of it. Want to thank you for joining us. My name is Dane Stewart. Please be joined by Kenzie Christiansen. And Kenzie, we got a lot of interesting matchups, great playoff action coming your way right here on KSLSports.com. But let's dive into each of these classifications. We'll start with the 4A bracket. Bear River, the top seed in this bracket. You have Mountain Crest, the 2 seed, Juan Diego, the 3, Ridgeline, the 4. Some region matchups in the quarterfinal as you've got Ridgeline taking on Skyview. Kenzie, when you look at this bracket, 4A, any of these quarterfinal teams that you feel like, man, this is maybe a sleeper, could put together some runs, upset some teams, and maybe make some noise in the 4A bracket?
I think some of the most competitive games that will happen, just starting a little bit before quarterfinals, just that first game and first round, Judge versus Logan. I think Judge will take home the win there, and then it'll put him against Bear River. So putting everybody there in quarterfinals, I do believe with just the competition both teams have had, Bear River will take the win between Judge and Bear River. And then skipping over to, Ridgeline and Skyview that are 4 and 5, I think that will be a very competitive game because they are school rivalries. They will bring in the heat both sides. Skyline's a very well-rounded team. They have some really strong seniors, and Skyview has a very young team. So it's going to really be a balance about just energy and who shows up to the field. Ultimately, I do think Ridgeline will take the win there, which would put them against Bear River. Further moving, Mountain Crest versus Waterford. I think Mountain Crest, so this is the hard thing too, is like who Waterford's played, who Mountain Crest has played, kind of doing that comparison. So I looked more at the individual teams and just the stats, and I feel like Mountain Crest is a more well-rounded team, a lot more even throughout, where Waterford has like a few higher, more standout players than what Mountain Crest does. So I think Mountain Crest, if they can stay as a unit, they will beat Waterford and ultimately end up with the win there. Juan Diego versus Green Canyon. I think I'm going right back over to the stats on that. I feel like Juan Diego has a handful of really strong players, and I feel like that's the exact same for Green Canyon. They just have some super strong players. So I think it's all about how they're going to prepare their teams in that game to be able to compete, as a unit and not just as an individual player, taking the ball, running and shooting, playing their individual game and unifying it. Just going off of also who they played, Juan Diego has played much harder teams than I believe Green Canyon, so Juan Diego will take that win in my book. And then that would put them Mountain Crest versus Juan Diego. Same mindset, going off of stats, who they played. I think even though Mountain Crest is a well-rounded team, Juan Diego has had such a higher competition, such a broader range of teams they've played. I think Juan Diego will take it over Mountain Crest. Moving up with Bear River versus Ridgeline. Bear River's just been blowing everybody out of the water. They beat Ridgeline once. I see it happening again. So then it would end up with us being at Bear River and Juan Diego. I think that'll be a very fun game. Juan Diego has some very technical players that are very finessing it like across the field. That's what I mean, is like playing a beautiful lacrosse game. They have some very beautiful players on the team, where Bear River is very fast. They have very, very fast. They have fast passes, fast runners, and they have strong aggression. So I think it's going to be a balance between those two, where I think maybe speed and drive might beat Juan Diego's, finesse and beautiful players. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because that was the question I was going to ask. Bear River's undefeated. Does anyone hand them their first loss of the year, or are they able to cap off a perfect season?
I think Juan Diego's going to put a great fight against them. I really, truly do think so. Juan Diego has a strong senior lineup. I think they'll put up a fight, but ultimately, just I've seen both teams play, and I mean, every game's a different game for sure. Every team has a way to prepare for their next game. But breaking it down, just seeing the actual statistics of it, seeing, the passing, catching plays, how their draw control is, I think Bear River will be pushing all the way through, but Juan Diego will give them a fight.
Awesome. Well, hey, you walked us through every game in 4A. Let's move to 5A, shall we? 5A, look, this is more traditional, right? We got a full slate of teams going. We got full slate of first round games, teams with first round buys. Kenzie, when we look at some of these first round matchups, is there a game or two that you feel like, man, that's actually a really difficult matchup? Keep an eye on an underdog, a lower seeded team here to potentially pull off an upset?
Yeah, the team I look at is actually 14 Highland and 19 Viewmont. When I came across it, I was just looking at the two, doing comparisons, and really trying to figure out which way that would lean. Highlands played harder games, but Viewmont has some really, really strong players on their team. Just a handful of strong players. I couldn't myself figure out which way it would go. But breaking it down, I do believe that Highland will take out the win because they played such hard teams and have a lot from like Park City, just some really hard teams throughout the season. that I think
Yeah.
they'll take that of those losses and put it against Viewmont, where Viewmont's had a few handful of wins against some, not as competitive teams.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, the old saying, iron sharpens iron, right? And when you think about Region 6, you've got Park City, Olympus, Brighton. I mean, we saw Olympus, Kenzie. That team is really good, but that is a top-loaded Region 6. And so having to go up against that, you wonder if that leads to some playoff success. That's a great pick. When we look at kind of that second round, right? Top seed in this tournament, Park City. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Brighton the 2, Olympus the 3. Kenzie, did that surprise you?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. It surprised me.
Why I say that is I think from what I've been seeing and playing is that, like, Park City is a very skilled team. They're fast, they're smart, they're very fluent. They have just really team teamwork going throughout. So it's just a very, very well-rounded team. And over Olympus, I think Brighton, they have, I don't know how to put this other than Brighton has very pretty players. And what I mean by that is they are very sharp off the draw. They have great stick skills and they are just very connected. Like they know where their teammates are at the whole time. They have that field awareness. They have that player awareness. Nash is a great coach that helps getting them, from point A to point B on the field and filling in those blanks that Brighton might have. Where Olympus, I think, still has a great, like, I feel like they have the strongest connection in the teams. And what I mean by that is when we did their game, they are used to having a high pressure on them, being able to pass, catch, and making great transitions off of beautiful shots. When we filmed them just this past week, they had tons of beautiful bounce shots, while defense was making connections on them, having pressure. So I think they're just a very strong and well-rounded, connected team that they have high trust in each other to be able to get those passes off with the defender next to them. Where on Brighton on the other side have very beautiful plays. They have a lot of, passion and connection with each other in like that way and a lot of finesse. So I think we're just dealing with two different type of dynamics of a team where they're both really good, but one just kind of ranks over the other just a bit more.
Interesting. Olympus got the regular season win, so we'll see if they were to match up again, who could get the playoff win and potentially advance to a state championship game. Kenzie, when we look at this bracket, I mean, I think Park City again, the one. We talked about Brighton the 2, Olympus the 3, Wasatch the 4. Do you see those as being the best 4 teams that make it to a semifinal, or is there a sneaky team in there that you think could upset one of those top 4 seeded teams?
I honestly think Jordan could beat Wasatch. They're so strong. And what I mean by that is they don't give up on anything. They're fighting for every ground ball, every draw. They have like so much drive. They have fast subs. And if they can keep those fresh feet and that hard drive, I think they could be one that's going to be up with the competing teams for sure.
It would be great games. And again, Park City, man, what a great job they've done. The number 1 seed again. We'll see if they can fend off the rest of the troops in 5A. Let's move to 6A, shall we? The 6A bracket. Look, this is a tough bracket. Skyridge, the number 1 seed. I think, I don't know. There's a lot of challenge with that in terms of opinions. I think that's very well earned. Mountain Ridge, the 2, Lone Peak, the 3, Dave's the 4. Those 2 teams played late in the year. Skyridge got a dominative win. You have to wonder how much that affected Davis in the RPI. But these top 4 seeds, Kenzie, anything that stands out to you about any of them?
I personally have talked to a lot of Davis girls and a lot of the Skyridge girls where they learned a lot from each other. And if they were to match up again, I think it would be a closer game just from the amount of knowledge and opportunity of that game that they were able to gain to go to a possible future game.
Interesting. So we talk about, again, we've got some first round matchups in here. We got some teams with, buys to a second round game. Kenzie, when you look at the first round matchups, we don't have a lot of them in 6A. Any matchups that you think are interesting in the first round?
Yeah, for Copper Hills. Yeah, when I went to look at that, like I see they have, some teams between them, but looking on their skill set, looking on just their dynamic teams, I was stumped a little bit on what team will come out with the win. So what I took to what I thought between Copper Hills and Weber is Copper Hills played some really hard and aggressive teams. They've had a lot of on them, where Weber had, a few more lighter teams playing against them, not as high competition. So it just kind of goes to who they've played, what they've learned from each game, and how they're going to go against each other. I think those for first round was the one that stumped me and gave me some questions.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. We talked about kind of the top four. One of the teams not in those top four, Syracuse, this is a team that got off to such a hot start in Region 1. Region 1 was so strong this year when you talk about Davis and Syracuse and Fremont, but they all kind of took a late dip in the RPI. Those teams respectively 4, 5, and 6. Kenzie, what do you think about those three teams in particular, Davis, Syracuse, Fremont? Obviously, Davis, an opportunity to run. We saw them. Syracuse, Fremont, are these teams that can put together playoff runs, maybe get to a semifinal?
I I would I would hope so. Not just from being from the north, but from seeing each teams play and compete against each other. Syracuse is one Fremont, Davis is one Syracuse is one Fremont, Fremont's one Syracuse. Like there's so many overlappings of them playing each other that that was a hard one. So where I'm coming down and where my mind is right now is I'm thinking about each team and how they play. Where have a couple really strong girls on Syracuse that are fast off the draw, that are very good at finding the assist to a shot. Syracuse is very connected with those few players. Where Davis has a very strong defense in a lot of their plays. And then flipping over to Fremont has a very smart, like attacking plays and just a very smart team unity on the attack side. So like mashing those three together would be like I feel like a perfect team. But seeing them as individual, I feel like it puts us in such a difficult situation to know who's going to go where because they're so similar but so different.
So that interesting. And look, again, these are teams that had great region seasons. We know there's some stuff going on, some dynamics there. Young programs still being built a little bit. Coaching staff doing a great job of kind of getting traction there. Skyridge, we mentioned that game against Davis late in the year. It was 1-2 at the time. Skyridge blew the wheels off of them. Mount Ridge, the 2 seed. Kenzie, I'm not going to ask you to pick a champ, but if there is a team that can't upend Skyridge in 6A, who would you say that team is?
Might sound a little crazy, but just from seeing Corner Canyon playing against Davis, I think with even them playing with a couple of players gone, some of their like best players gone against their game yesterday against Davis, Corner Canyon pulled through well. And I think if they can play that game with adding on some of their, top players, I think they could honestly have like almost an underdog kind of situation and come pull through with Skyridge. They were very good their first game. Skyridge lost by a bit, but then their second game, they were very close in differentials between points with Corner Canyon. So I honestly think Corner Canyon could be almost an underdog and coming up and surprising us.
Wow, that's a great one. They finished 4th in Region 4 there, the 7th seed. Look, if they were to do that, they'd be battle tested, potentially have to go through the 2 seed Mountain Ridge, the 3 seed Lone Peak, the 6 seed Fremont. There's some good teams they'd have to go through to get there. That's a doozy, Kenzie. Bringing the A game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just had such strong drive from what I saw just in that last game they played that, if they bring that power, Lone Peak is a fantastic team. They played them. Lone Peak did overall win against them, but they're a team that learns from every challenges and learns from their mistakes. And I have seen that progress throughout the season. So I think taking the games that they've played in and, learning from it and growing and, doing those duplicate games like they had with Skyridge and just learning and progressing off of that, I really think that they could be a good team. They could be one up there.
Man, I don't know if we can top that. That might be our ending note. A sleeper pick, the underdog Corner Canyon, a team to keep an eye on here in 6A. Skyridge, fantastic year. number 1 seed, well earned. We talk about Mountain Ridge, the 2, Lone Peak, the 3, and Davis, the 4. It's going to be a great tournament. We cannot wait. We've got girls playoff action coming up for you right here on KSLSports.com. We'll balance between the boys, but we will have every semifinal and championship game for 4A, 5A, and 6A right here on KSLSports.com. For Vince Francis and Kenzie Christiansen, we appreciate you joining us for this playoff preview for girls lacrosse, and catch us as we bring you all the girls lacrosse playoff action we can right here on KSLSports.com. What?